I'm sure many of us here have heard of the notion of the middle class getting wiped out. Some of us here might believe that the middle class is already wiped out. But for myself, didn't quite resonate with it. Not until recently, where I started to see all these bits and pieces of evidence. It really gives the impression that the middle class is on the verge of getting cooked. I felt compelled to sound the alarm that, hey, I think all this stuff is going on, a lot of it behind the scenes. People may not see what's coming. And so what I want to do in this video is share my thoughts in terms of how this plan was starting to get set up to the point of the actual plan that is going on right now as we speak, to can anything be done about it? Let's get into the main points. So first off is the setup. Because for the past couple decades leading up towards 2020, I thought middle class was doing all right. I thought that people were buying stuff from homes to cars, just going out on vacations. It really didn't give the impression that the middle class was in a bad position. So again, when it came to this notion of there was a setup, in 2020, what happened? Well, one big thing that happened was money became cheap to borrow. The Fed dropped interest rates to near 0%, so people were borrowing money. Then you add the notion of stimulus checks, and people were just spending. But really what was going on was people started to get into debt. Debt was starting to brew. And as debt was starting to brew, we also saw inflation go through the roof. Inflation was getting crazy. Cars, food, everything was getting expensive. So the Fed then decided to raise interest rates, even upwards past 5%. So this is now the beginning of the setup because people were now getting into debt, getting all types of loans. Things were starting to get expensive. People's buying power started to dwindle. So in the year 2022, even the CEO of Chase said that he felt Americans had around 9 months of buying power. Now keep in mind, that was 2022. So you go fast forward a little bit later, what happened? People lost their buying power. And we could see this. There were articles out saying that the average person didn't even have $1,000 to cover an emergency. So what did people then do? Start using their credit cards. They started to rack up the credit card debt. Now we really start seeing the stage being set. So again, I'll summarize it this way. Money got really cheap to borrow. People were getting stimulus checks. People started spending like crazy. Inflation went crazy. Then the Fed decided to raise the interest rates. People started to get squeezed to the point where they are now resorting to credit cards, where now those were even beginning to max out because we are seeing record high credit card debt. And again, this is the basis for the setup. Now, the next part I want to cover is what I'm calling the plan, or perhaps the controlled demolition, which to me is really sad. I was in denial that this was really happening. But as I said, when you put all these bullet points together, you could see it. I look at it this way. Imagine it being a chess game and all the pieces are being put into place to do a checkmate. That's what I see with all these points. It's all the positions being put in place. Now, there's a number of them, but I'm gonna give 5 for the sake of the video to illustrate just some of these pieces that are now in place. So the first one is credit cards and the interest rates with them. There's a big number of people who are not just in credit card debt, they are maxed out. And they have said that the number of people who are maxed out on their credit cards could be 1, if not 2, out of 5 Americans. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. And as people were already in debt, they went ahead and raised the interest rates on these cards. Now, given, just for context, in the year 2019, the average credit card APR was roughly around 18%. Today, that's around 25 to 26%. And I'm talking about with those who have good credit. I'm sure some of us here are like, man, my credit card APR is way more than that. So what happens is people were already getting cooked with their credit cards, and now it's like getting cooked more with the interest. The second point now is insurances have been going up. Now, in the past couple years, home insurance have been going up, Car insurance has been going up. So I'm just talking about the basic insurances that we tend to pay for on a regular basis. Those went up significantly. And as I said, what's the goal? To further squeeze the average person or the middle class. The third now, and this is now more recent, is healthcare. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there is so much going on in the news when it comes to the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies, and they're not being renewed. So by default, they are saying that healthcare this year could skyrocket, and some people have already been seeing their rates go up. I've actually heard people where their insurance rates have went up 4 times. And keep in mind, this is now starting to hit us. The fourth point I want to cover are tariffs. They were introduced last year, and right out the gate, you saw goods starting to go up in price. Now, what we've been hearing is that we are going to really start to see the effect of these tariffs this year and in the coming years. So again, the goods that we buy getting more expensive. I think you could see the writing on the wall that's brewing. Okay, so I gave 4 points. The fifth point that I'm going to share, I like to call this the elephant in the room, because you could tell people don't quite want to talk about it, which I don't blame them, because it's not positive. But it's the notion of AI and robotics taking over the workforce. And we're talking about white collar jobs, blue collar jobs being eliminated because, again, of this advancement in AI. And we get it, AI, there's a lot of benefits to it. But when you see articles, AI experts believing that around 40% of jobs could be eliminated, that's very uncomfortable. And so I'm just giving 5 points. Now, I want to describe this. Why would I call this, in a way, a controlled demolition? If you see all of these points standing alone by themselves, they don't seem like much. But you put it all together, it could be something. Now, also, when it comes to the middle class getting squeezed or wiped out, I want to give this analogy. Imagine a boxer, and they've been boxing many rounds, and they're in the 6th round. And they are gassed, they are fatigued. That's like someone with all the debts they have, whether it is, let's say, a mortgage, let's say it's student loans, let's say it's credit card debt, but they are already not in a good position. They're already gassed. All that is needed really is not a flurry of punches to knock that person out. All it takes is one punch. Let's say that one punch, that straight punch, could be insurance. Or what it could be, let's say the hook is the healthcare that just all of a sudden got expensive overnight. Or how about AI being the uppercut? That's what we're seeing right now. And at this moment, there are no signs of this looking better. So we see the plan that is now currently in motion, which leads to my last part, which is, where do we go from here? And what do we do? Because this sounds very negative and doom and gloom, and I know it may sound that way, but here's the key, that there is still time to make a move. If you are still flexible, even though it might feel very uncomfortable right now, the key to find higher ground when you see a flood coming is you find the higher ground as soon as possible. So if you know you are in that position, I'll tell you what I would do. I would first assess my current finances. If they're not looking good and I see everything that's coming, which I'm just going to say it's the flood or the controlled demolition, how do we find higher ground? Does that mean getting another job or a side hustle? Does that mean even learning a new skill or perhaps opening up a business? But the key is to make higher ground, because if the middle class is on the verge of collapse, on the verge of being eliminated, that means there's only going to be 2 places to go. Either go up towards the upper class, or God forbid, go down more towards the lower class. So the question is, where would we go from here, especially if we are in that type of a situation? Now, as I said, this may sound like it's all doom and gloom, but I'll tell you that my business mentor has always told me this, because we understand that times are very fragile, right? We could see that people are not quite getting along. People are, I'll just say the policymakers are kind of arguing on where the economy needs to go. And things could get better, but things could also get worse. And so my business mentor has always said this to me. His mentor was actually a billionaire. And he said this, he told me this, he said, Duke, you always do hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. So if you are hearing this information and you feel that this is helpful, I definitely appreciate if you give this video a like, even comment, give your thoughts. If you are seeing what's going on out there, chime in. I would love to see the feedback and see what your thoughts are. Also subscribe and even share, because with what's going on, what I see is that so many people don't see what's coming. It's almost as if it's being done quietly, leading up to a big rug pull. So again, if you feel this is helpful, definitely share this with others, and I look forward to the next video.